supportive, what we call supportive concept to explain this long run theory of production. So basically those things are included in this lesson. Okay, so you will be learn about Isocont curve, what is mean by that, and also you will learn about different kind of another concept like marginal return, technical substitution likewise. So that is basically a kind of idea to get to know about the long run, how we are going to do the production in the long run. Okay, so with that, yes. So as we previously also talked, so this long run is basically, so in short run, we have identified there are different kind of constraint, right? So we have different kind of constraint with the time limit. So we have only one variable and there's another fixed variable as well. So that cannot be changed with the time period. So that is what we are called it as short run. Okay. So in the short run, the process of production can be different. And there we have learned about different theories, and also we have learned about how we are going to calculate those things. And so so in long run of production, so we consider this all the inputs are variable. Why? Because in the long run, you can do any changes to your production. So with the long run, you can change your different kind of fixed things, fixed cost, or different kind of expenses into variables. Okay, so with that aspect, we consider all the input that we are using for the production is considered to be as a variables. Okay, both the labor and capital are variable. That means it will be changed according to your increase or decrease of your output level. Okay, so as I mentioned here, the plant size can be changed. So in the long run, your plant size or the capacity can be changed, or you can there can be mergers, acquisitions, likewise different kind of changes can be happen in the plant size, that your production site. Okay, and also you can choose new locations to expand your production. So with that we identify that all the inputs that you are using is variables. Okay, and also here in this equation you can clearly identify, so this production in the long run is a function of capital and labor. Okay, that means if you are changing any kind of capital or labor output, that will be definitely impacted to your quantity. Okay, if not, if you are increasing or decreasing your quantity, that will be increasing or decreases your capital and the labor. So at the short run, there's no any two variables there, but there's only labor is the change in variable. Okay, so capital is a fixed one. Okay, to determine the optimal combination of input, so we use the concept production isocont. Okay, so in the long run, since these two costs are variable, so we need to identify optimal combination of this product. The inputs. That for an example, if you are going to produce 100 batch, okay, if you are going to produce 100 batch, how much amount of capital that you are needed for the production. Okay, and how much of optimal labor amount or count of labor you need for the production. That is basically the identification in this production long run. That will be determined by the production isocont. Okay, that is basically the concept that elaborates the how these variables or the input change according to your increase or decrease of your output. Okay, so that will be explained by the production of isocont theory. Okay, and isocont shows all the different combinations of L and K. So L we differs as labor, K as a capital. Okay, so this isocont shows what kind of different combination that you can use. For an example, how much of labor, how much of capital that you can use to produce a given level of output. Okay, so for an example, as I previously mentioned, so if you need to produce 100 batch, you may use 10 labors and 10 capital for that. So that might be optimal combination to produce the 100 amount of batch. Or else you can use 5 labor and 15 capital. That also produce optimal combination through these input levels to produce 100 amount of batch. Okay. So this, so as I mentioned, this all different combination of L and K that can be used to produce a given level of output. So basically this is isocont. Isocont එකෙන් කියන්නේ ඔයා කොයි විදිහේ combinations use කරලාද how much amount of that you are using labor and capital and produce the given level of output. Okay. Yes. And also here. So here you can see so they are going to produce 5 quantity. Okay, so various combinations of input that will produce the given level of output. So here they have mentioned in the production, so they do have capitals and labor as their inputs. So then they are going to produce 5 units. Okay, so this is their level of output. So if they are going to use the first method, they may use 11 capital and 1 labor. Of course, with that also they can produce 5 output. Okay, and then so using B method, they are going to utilize 7 capital and 2 labors only to produce 5. So these are different kind of combinations. So various combinations of input to produce the given level of output. Okay. So in short run, there's no any problem because you can only change one particular variable, that is labor. That your capital is fixed. එනිසා ඔයාට තියෙන්නේ change කරන්න variable එක විතරයි. Okay, but in long run, so you have to do critical analysis and decision making on these 2 variables or these 2 inputs. Okay, so as I explained mentioned here, so if you are using different kind of methods to produce the Q amount of output. So here මෙතන තියෙන 5යිනේ 5ක් හදන්න නම් so they are going to use different kind of method. So at last they are going to use 1 capital and 5 labor. Okay, to produce 5. So likewise they have to determine what kind of method that we are using, what kind of combinations of input that we are using to produce the level of output. Okay. Yes, so as you can see here, so here you have the unit of K, if not the capital that they have employed in the production, and also here they have mentioned what? So here they have mentioned the unit of L, how much of labor used. If they are using 1 labor and 1 capital, so that they can produce only 4 units. Clear? If they are going to, if not, they are going to use 3 labor and also 3, yes, and also 3 unit of capital, how much they can produce? Only 41. Okay? And also, here also, you can see if you are going to use different kind of unit of labor and different kind of unit of capital, how much amount that you can produce. But see, if the given level of output is 73, okay? So if you are asked to produce 73 units, so you can use different kind of combination to produce this particular output. So if you want to produce 73, you don't use 7 capital and 4 output because it will produce 90. So that is not your optimal output. So you need 73. Okay, 73 වෙන්න නම් කොයි වගේ combination එකක්ද ඔයා දාන්න? කොච්චරක් ඔයා capital use කරනවද? කොච්චරක් ඔයා labor use කරනවද? Okay, so that define your optimal usage of input to produce the optimum output. Okay, and also here in isocont I have mentioned isocont is various combination of input to produce the given level of output. If we assume 73 as a given level of output, you may use 6 capital 4 label. That is one combination. Or else you can use 6 labels and 4 capital. And here also you can use 3 capital and 8 labels to produce the 73. Okay, but here you need to compromise. Then compromise කරන්න. If you are using 6, you cannot use 6 here to produce 73. Ne? Hayai දෙකම use කරන්න බෑනේ. If you are going to increase 6, you may go with 4 labels. If you are going to increase your labor units, so you need to decrease your capital usage here. Okay, are you all clear that? So here you have compromise. Clear the number. So the given level of output you may produce by using different kind of combination of inputs. Okay, but when you are using this combination of input, you have to sacrifice one of your inputs to use extra unit from your capital maybe. Okay? Okay, are you all clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So others? Okay. Yes. So as I explained for 73 output also, if you are taking 52, that also, if you are going to explain that what is isocont කියන්නේ මොකක්ද කියලා explain කරන්න කිව්වොත්, that you have to do is, you should mention that is various kind of combination of input that we are using to produce the given level of output. Not just an output, but the given level of output. Okay? So that output is definitely, it becomes your optimal input combination, as well as that input combination help you to, produce the optimal production or the output. Okay? So that is basically the isocont. Yes. So this is isocont curve. Okay? So assume that you are going to produce something using aluminium and steel. Okay? So those are two things that you are using. Okay? What happened? So those are two variables here. There's no any fixed amount. You can change whatever you want to produce the optimal level. Okay? Yes. So as you can see here also in the isocont. Yes, wait. Assume that here what happened. So if you are going to produce this much of combination for your given produce the given output level, so you may use this much of aluminium, but this much of steel. Okay, so this is your given level of output. This 100, 200 and 300 are your given level of output. If you need to produce this 100, you may use this much of aluminium and this much of steel also. But you have to compromise. If you are going to increase one, you have to compromise the other one. Okay? Assume that you need to produce 200 here. So with this particular period, you cannot produce 200. If you want to produce 200, of course, you need to expand your unit of inputs. Ne? So like this. So if you are going to produce 200, of course, you need to produce this using this combination of input. Here, this much and this much. Okay, it's quite different than your previous curve. Because this previous curve is basically for 100 level of output. If you need to increase your given level of output, of course, you need to increase your capacity. In the short run, of course, you can, in the long run, you can do this expanding capacities in your production. Clear? So this is kind of a graph for explaining your isocont, okay? Yes. Okay, so now what is actually currently what is mean by isocon? දැන් ඔයා isocon කියන්නේ මොකක්ද කියලා දන්නවා. But you should know what are the characteristics of isocon. Okay, so is it kind of a negative slope one? Is it kind of a positive one? What is mean? Okay, so likewise you should know what are the characteristic of isocon. Okay, so it says it's a negative slope one. Okay, so what is meant by negative slope? So have you identified in any lesson that you identify what is meant by negative slope?
Indifference curve in we learn, madam.
Okay, in indifference curve also you have learned. What else? Yes. Have you learned about demand and supply?
Personally, I have learned, but in this course we don't have demand and supply curves, madam. From indifference curve and utility, we have to study, madam.
Okay. So if I just mention basic thing in demand is like this. So in demand, what kind of slope that you have? Demand වලට මොකක්ද තියෙන slope?
Constant slope it has.
For the demand. So what kind of relationship that have demand with the price and quantity?
It's a linear relationship.
No.
Negative relationship, madam.
Yes. Why we are telling it as negative relationship?
Prices increase, demand is decrease.
Okay. So when one particular variable is increased, the other one will be decreased. So that's why in demand also we saying that demand is a quantity equal function of your P. For an example, assuming that other factors are constant. අපි කියනවා in demand වලදී නම් අනිත් factors ඔක්කොම constant වෙලා තියෙන වෙලාවෙදී you assuming only the price. When price increase, what happened to your quantity? When price decrease, what happened to your quantity? So that is the basic understanding about how these slopes are convey the message. Okay, so in isocont also it's a negative sloped one. For an example, if I draw the isocont here, so it's like this. Okay, here you have L, here you have K. Both are variables. Okay, you can easily change, or you can change with your input levels or the output levels. Okay, here what kind of slope that you are having? It's a kind of negatively sloped one. Why? If you calculate the slope here, okay, if you calculate the slope here, you will understand what? මොකක්ද මෙතන වෙන්නේ? If you increase, yes.
Gradually slope is declining, or when come down.
Yes. So like this, you can explain like this. So if you are increasing your quantity, if I plot here, you are going to have 3 K's or capital and 2 labels. So likewise, you are going to have different kind of method to produce your particular output. So that will automatically come a curve like this. So if you take one particular point, it will emphasize you. If you are increasing this much of capital, you have to decrease this much of labor. Okay? මෙතන හිතමු. So you are going to shift from A to B. Okay? You are going to shift from A to B. What happened? So at the A level, A point, you have used this much of capital. මෙච්චර capital use කර. And here, you have used this much of labor. But when you're going to go with B, you have to reduce your capital and increase your labor. Okay, you have to compromise one thing, one variable to increase the other variable. So that is negatively slope one. That we call trade-off. If more of L, then less is K. Simply. It's a kind of trade-off. Trade-off. Make a වැඩි කරනවා make a අඩු කරන්න ඕන. So likewise. So isoquant is like that. You cannot use everything increasing at the same time. In the long run also, if these two variables are, these inputs are variable, even though, so you have, when in a particular level of producing output, what you have to do is you have to do the trade-off. Otherwise, you cannot use everything at once. Okay, දෙකම එකපාර increase කරන්න බෑ same amount එකෙන්. Same level එකේ තියන්න බෑ. But you have to compromise one. Therefore, we call that isoquant have a characteristic of negatively sloped curve. Okay? It is convex to origin. What is meant by convex to origin?
Its curve face to origin, not the other, inside, not the outside.
Yes. It is closer to your origin. That means here, it is convex. It's like convex. Convex to origin. And also isoquant cannot be intersect. Isoquant intersect when bad. Why?
Because in same as indifference curve, if A combination is equal to B combination, if both on same quantity, we cannot intercept, because if we have another quantity, we should shift to upside door, outside door, inside, so it cannot be increased. The combination is unique to the curve.
Yes. That is, yes, totally correct. So this particular amount of output that we are going to produce is unique to this particular curve. If you need to increase that one, you have to shift here. There's no any convex, there's no any intersect there. Okay, so curves are independently for different kind of output level. Okay, and then upper isoquant represent the higher level of output. As I previously also explained, at here also, so the upper isoquant represent the higher amount of output. So likewise, if you go from origin to the upward or to the upward direction, what will happen is your quantity level will be increased, definitely. So it shows the higher level of output or the production. Okay, so for an example, if you are going to a business organization that is producing some kind of goods, so they may interpret their production like this. Isoquant curve එකකින් යාළ production එක පෙන්නනවා. So then you are asking to explain it. So in this 2017, we had this kind of output level and we have used this much of input combination. Okay, this is your particular period isoquant. Okay, it explains, okay, you have produced 100 amount and you have used different kind of input combination for that. And also in 2018, you have increased your production. So when you are increasing production, you cannot represent it with the same curve because it is basically for this much of output. A output එකේදී quantity inputs කොහොමද change උනේ කියලා. So likewise, so in characteristic dimension, the upper isoquant represent the higher level of output. Also, the lower isoquant represent the lower level of output. Okay? Yes. so you have learned about what is isocont, what kind of pattern that has, and also what kind of characteristic it has. So you have learned about මොකද්ද මේ ඇත්තටම isocont කියන්නේ, why it is important to the long run. So in long run you have two variables and it can be changed, but at the long run also you have to compromise one variable. So that basic things you have learned. Okay, so now you are going to learn about the marginal product and marginal return. Okay, yes, marginal rate of technical substitutions. Okay, so you are going to learn about the marginal output or the marginal product. If one particular input is increased, what happened to your marginal product? Okay, when you are increasing one particular product, how much of input is changed? Okay, here mentioned marginal product of an input is the change in total product in response to the increase of variable input by single unit. Okay, if you are going to increase your input by single unit, what happened to your total production? Is it changed by 1%? Is it changed by 2%? Is it changed by only 2 units? Okay, that basically defines by the what? Marginal product. Okay, so this marginal product is related with the marginal rate of technical substitution. So this marginal rate of technical substitution is a basic concept about your input. How much of the delta, difference of your capital and your difference of your labor. Okay, for an example, as I previously drawn, if you are going to identify the slope there, slope එකක් identify කරගන්න යනකොට you have to use this formula. So from here to here. So marginal product in the sense you are going to change, right? Yes, this is K2, this is K1. If you are going from A to B, A in the B වලට යනවා නම්, so what happened? What happened? So you have to decrease your K and increase your labor. So this difference will determine your slope here. So likewise, so the marginal rate of technical substitution in the sense, if you are changing 1 unit from your capital, how much sacrificed by the labor? That is the technical substitution. Technical in the sense the input substitution that you are conducted when you are increasing your inputs or the outputs. So the rate that which producer can substitute between 2 inputs and maintain the same level of output. Okay, and they need to have the level of same output, right? The rate at which a producer can substitute between 2 input and maintain the same level of output. So in isocont you have learned, so you are going to maintain the given level of output there, but you are going to substitute each inputs. You are going to increase your capital, either your labor. So likewise you are going to substitute those 2 inputs to maintain the same level of output. So that is when you are going to maintain your output with using different kind of substitution in your input, of course you have to do technical substitutions. Okay, otherwise you cannot achieve different levels of or different methods or combination of input to produce the given level output. Okay, so this basically helps you to determine the optimal inputs level or different kind of optimal usage of variables or the inputs that you are having. Okay, so here you have to have good understanding about marginal product and input. it is basically is the change in total production in response to the single unit change of your input. What happened if you are increasing your capital? What happened to your output? Okay. So in marginal rate of technical substitution represents like this. When you are changing this much of capital, how much change in the labor? Okay. So yes. So that is if you are taking like this. So if I mention you an equation here, quantity is 0.5 K plus 0.25 L. So what is basically represented by these values? මොකද්ද මේ values වලින් කියන්නේ? Yes.
To have the same production, how much what is the rate? What is the rate between labor and on capital? We have to change to have the same amount of production.
Okay, so in this equation, actually what refers is, so if someone is asked you to interpret this one, so for an example, if we are taking this one, අපි तो මේක ඇලුවා interpret කරන්න යන්න කියලා. So that represent like this. If you are increasing 1 unit of labor, that will increase your quantity by 0.25. Clear? This represent, so since it has positive sign here, it is increase of your output, okay? If you are going to increase your labor by 1% or 1 unit, your quantity will be increased by 0.25. Okay? And then this represent, if you are going to increase 1 capital units, that will increase your output by 0.5. Clear? So yes, the amount, the calculation, the answer that you obtain from MRTAs is the slope here. So that is the slope. Okay, it explains how the marginal rate of how much of percentage change in your capital or labor to produce this much of output. Okay, so if you obtain 0.5 for this answer, it explains that, but 0.5% of labor, if you are changing 1 unit of if you are changing 1 unit of labor, that will be is මොකද්ද අපි කියන්නේ මෙතන balance මේ difference එක answer එක ආවහම 0.5 නම් if you are increasing one particular input, the 0.5% of output will be increased. Okay, that is your technical substitutions. So likewise, so I'm not going to do the calculations here, but you have to just know the understanding about how you are going to interpret this slope and what is meant by this marginal rate of substitutions and all. Okay, so that is this MRT is basically related with your isocont. Okay, this isocont curve also explain the delta curve differences and L differences and what percentage of rate. කොච්චර percentage එකකින්ද මේ දෙන්නගේ වෙනස වෙන්නේ. Okay, අර මම කලින් draw කරද්දී මම පෙන්වුවේ ඔයගලන්ට slope එක. So that represent from which percentage, which rate that you are going to do the substitution. If you are going to increase 1 labor, so then 0.25 of K need to be increase or decrease. Okay, if you are going to increase, of course you have to decrease your capital by 0.25. Okay, if you are taking this other way around, L එක මේ පැත්තට දාලා K එක ගත්තොත් එහෙම that represent if you are increasing 1 capital, so your labor will be increase by, if you are going to increase the capital, of course your labor should be decreased by particular percentage that you obtain from this calculation. Okay, clear? So you just need to have a kind of understanding here. මොකද්ද මේ equation එක? මොකද්ද මේ equation එකකින් ඇත්තටම වෙන්නේ? So that basic thing you have to know, because this marginal product MRTS both concept are linked with your isocont curve. If in the examination if it asks explain the isocont concept or the curve in the long run, so you may explain your isocont in simple term. Okay, you may mention or in a given particular output level how much of different input combinations are used. That is basically isocont. And then you are drawing the curve and explain, of course, this isocont is like this. If you are increasing that much, you have to compromise this much from your particular input. Okay, and also you can mention the different kind of characteristic of your isocont. Okay, and also when you are explaining the compromise of different kind of input, you can use this particular wording, marginal rate of technical substitution, to interpret those things. Okay? Yes, okay, one more explanation. Yes, so basically, this concept is basically represents, so මෙතන කියන්නේ ළමයි marginal product and marginal rate of technical substitution. So this technical substitution, what we call is how it is related to your input. Okay, when you are increasing single unit of one input, how much percentage response to your changes in the other input. සිංහලෙන් කිව්වොත් ඔයා හිතන්න ඔයාගේ L එක එහෙම නැත්නම් ලේබර් ඔයා එක්කෙනෙක්ගෙන් වැඩි කරනවා. ලේබර් කෙනෙක් වැඩි කරනකොට ඔයාට මේ කැපිටල් උත් වැඩි කරන්න බෑ, because it is negatively sloped one. Then you are going to decrease your capital, but when you are calculating this answer, if it's obtained like 0.25, අපි તો මේ calculate කරාට පස්සේ 0.25 කියලා ආවයි කියලා. ඒ කියන්නේ 0.25 percentage එකකින් තමයි change වෙන්නේ එක එක input එක. ඒ කියන්නේ if you are increasing one labor, your capital will be decreased by 0.25. Okay? If you are going to increase your capital by 1 unit, your labor will be decreased by 0.25. So that is marginal rate of technical substitution. How you are going to substitute your input when you are generating particular level of output. So in the isocont also you have identified there are different combinations, but you are going to maintain the same level of output, but there are different substitution. You may go with this point to produce 100, or you may go with this point to produce 100. Okay, but there are different kind of compromisations. But with this calculation, you are going to identify the rate of change. How much of changes can be happen if you are increasing 1 unit from one particular input. Clear? Okay, so marginal product cost is the same. It is explained if you are going to increase one single unit of input. If you are going to increase one labor, what happened to your total production? Is it changed by 1%? Is it changed by 2%? Is it changed by 0.5? So likewise. Okay, hope it's clear. Okay. Yes. Okay, so here you can calculate this one. Can you all try? So take, so you are going to change your labor. So there's 0, 1 to 2. You are going to increase labor by 1 unit and capital by. So when you are going to increase labor, of course, here you can mention 11 ඉඳන් 4ට අඩු කරන්න ඕනේ. That is the negative slope. Then calculate your MRTS. that represent the rate of technical substitution. කොච්චර rate එකකින්ද මේ substitution එක වෙන්නේ කියන එක. labor එකක් වැඩි කරනකොට capital එක අඩු වෙලා තියෙනවා. but how much of rate? කොච්චර rate එකකින්ද මේක change වෙලා තියෙන්නේ කිය. cleared? Yes, please do the calculation. Take 5 minutes and do the calculation and tell me. And I'm going to ask volunteers, okay? So since I hope these people are joined but not in front of your laptops, right? At least so therefore I'm asking from the volunteers. So you need to calculate this MRTS and explain. Okay? Okay. Take 5 minutes and do the calculation for this one. So delta K in the sense the difference from 11 to 7. How much? And difference from 1 to 2. How much? And then do the calculations and tell me the answers for this one. So likewise. Okay. Hope everyone is finished. Finished, right? Yes. So the first one, it represent, so the answer will be generated as how? When you're increasing your labor from 1 to 2, you're going to increase your labor by 1 unit, and that will effect to decrease your capital by 4. So then it is a -4. Okay? Can someone explain what is mean by this -4?
-4 means that rate is previously we got the negative slope has.
Yes.
So that means the production that curve is deducting negative slope indicate that minus.
Yes. So how you have to explain is, so if you are obtain -4 here, that represent the marginal rate of technical substitution. Okay? ඒ කියන්නේ ළමයි එක මොකක් හරි technical substitutions කියලා කියන්නේ ඔයාගේ inputs නේ. If you are going to increase your input by 1 unit, ඒ කියන්නේ ඔයාගේ තියෙන inputs long run එකේදී අපිට inputs දෙකක් තියෙනවනේ variables. ඒකේ එක variable එකකින් ඔයා එකක් increase කරන්න යනකොට, okay, production එකේදී increase කරනකොට මම කිව්වා හැම වෙලෙම it's compromising the other variable. ඒකේදී ඊට පස්සේ so labor increase karnot, what happen is your capital will be decreased by 4 unit. Okay? By 4 unit. That is the rate of technical substitution. Okay? If you are going to increase or decrease one particular variable, that will affect to compromise of the other variable. And this MRT is used to represent the rate here. Okay? Clear? So that 4 -4 means that represent the compromising of 4 units from one particular variable when increasing the other variable by 1 unit. එක variable එකක් 1 unit එකකින් වැඩි කරනකොට අනිත් variable එක කොච්චර compromise කරනවද? අඩු වෙන්න එපා. So because in the long run there's a compromisation, and also you have learned in the long run there's concept called isocont. Okay, so that explain the minus or the negative relationship in the technical substitution. අපිට හැම වෙලේම එකම සමාන විදිහට දෙකම substitute කරන්න බෑ. එකක් 3ෙන් වැඩි කරනකොට අනිකත් 3ෙන් වැඩි කරන්නේ නැහැ. So in the isocont you understood it has a negative slope, therefore you have to compromise one variable at any point. Clear? Clear then?
Yes, madam.
Okay. So yes, in examination, so there might be question like this. Sometimes we'll give the answer, the MRTS, and ask you to explain. Okay? Or else we give like this table, and you need to identify or gain the answers or obtain the answers through calculation, and you have to interpret those answers as well. You have, as I previously, and when I start in the lecture also I mentioned, each concept in this particular lesson are connected each other. When you are doing the calculation also, you need the understanding about the isocont, the characteristic of isocont. Okay? Yes. So here. So yes, this also we have previously discussed. So each isocont represent the different level of output, as I mentioned. So if you are going from origin to upward, it represents the high amount of output there. So this, if I rename this particular the isocont curve as A, so A output is lower than the B output or the B curve. Clear? So output rises as you are moving to the northeast. ඉස්සරහට යන්න යන්න තමයි your output will be increased. Okay? So, okay, in examination, there might be question like this. මෙහෙම අහන්නත් පුළුවන් question එකක්. Okay? So it will ask question like giving this kind of diagram and ask, and also they will rename these curves as well, and they are asking, can you expand your output level with remaining on the same curve A? කියලා ඇහුවොත් A කියන curve එකේ ඉන්න ගමන්ම can you expand your output? What's the answer? Yes or no?
No, iso means same quantity. That in like indifference curve. In that curve, one curve, that production is same in every combination on the curve.
Yes, exactly. So if question ask you the question, you have to give the answer like what Supun gave. Okay? Supun කිව්ව විදියට explain කරන්න. Yes කියලා විතරක් ඉන්න බෑ. No කියලා විතරක් ඉන්න බෑ. If not, you have to explain why. So in isocon, as he mentioned, so you may at the particular curve, you may go for the same output level but with a different combination of your input. That is isocon map. Okay, sometimes this curve might be not renamed as isocont. Okay, you have to identify. Okay, so here we have two variables and different output levels, and also it is convex to origin and negatively sloped one. When going upward, it increased the output level. Then you have to identify. This is isocont map. Okay. Yes. So I have explained those things in here. මෙතනදී මම explain කරපු එකම මෙතන තියෙනවා curves වලින් mention කරලා. So this marginal rate of technical substitution කියන්නේ මොකක්ද කියලා. What is mean by marginal technical substitution? I already explained with the diagrams as well. The slope of isocon shows the rate at which L can be substituted to K. That's what I explained. It shows the rate at which L can be substituted for K. Okay, L වෙනුවට තව L amount එකක් තියෙනවා නම් ඒකට substitute කරන්න පුළුවන් තව කොච්චරක් තියෙනවද K. So likewise. Okay, so this slope is marginal rate of technical substitution. So if MRTS is greater than 0 and is diminishing the increase of input of labor. So it diminishes the input of labor. So as I previously mentioned, මේක වැඩි කරනකොට මේක අඩු වෙලා යනවා. So likewise, it's a diminishing increase of input. So since we are calculating delta K divided by delta L, so that represents the L aspects. L එකෙන් තමයි අපි ඒක එතකොට represent කරන්නේ. Which L can be substituted for K. How much of, if you are increasing 1L, how much of K will be substituted. Likewise, so increase of input of labor. Clear? So in previous calculation you obtained minus value, okay? So you obtained minus. So that means not your MRT is not more than 0 but is lower than 0. That is increase of your, that is not diminishing. එතකොට diminishing නෙමෙයි. Or else diminution of decrease in input of labor. But here you obtain or මෙතනදී positive amount එකක් ආවොත් MRTs that is greater than 0, that is diminishing of increase in input of labor. Clear? Yes. Okay. So now you learn about what is meant by isocont and what are the characteristics, how you can interpret isocont, and also MRTS and marginal product, and you know the calculations and interpret the calculation. And what is ridge lines? Another ridge lines කියලා කියන්නේ. Ridge lines are the locus point on the isocont, where the marginal product of input are equal to 0. Okay? Ridge lines කියලා කියන්නේ locus point of the isocont, where marginal product of input are equal to 0. ඒ කියන්නේ input වැඩි කරාට production එක where the marginal product of the inputs are equal to 0. ඉන්පුට් 0 වෙන තැනක් එනවනේ. ඒ කියනවා කොච්චර වැඩි කරලා ගියත් එක තැනකට එනවා මාර්ජිනල් වේව් එක වැඩි වෙන්නේ නැති තැන. Okay, so that points are mentioned by the ridge lines. It shows the feasible area. So now you just know then what value මොන වගේ combinations වලින් the production එක කරන්න පුළුවන් කියලා. So previously you learned from the isocont is when using different kind of combination of input, how you are going to produce the given level of output. But in the ridge lines, you are going to identify what is the feasible area to produce. What area I produce what combination will be the optimal. Okay? So this feasible area, you are going to identify like this. So the lower rigid line explain MP. So through this marginal product lines, you are using to interpret the ridge lines. Okay? So lower ridge lines explains the marginal product of L. Okay, if you are drawing a curve like this, so from this side is L තියෙන මේ පැත්තනේ, මේ පැත්තමයි K තියෙන්නේ. මේ පැත්ත 0 වෙන තැන තමයි we call the lower rigid lines. Okay, මම පෙන්නනම් පහළට යනකොට කොහොමද ඒ curves තියෙන්නේ කියලා. So in the upper rigid line explain MP equals to 0, this region. Okay, from this region, and you are going to identify what is the feasible region to produce. Okay, if you are, for an example, for the brief explanation, අපි හිතමු මෙන්න මේ area එක තමයි ඔයාගේ feasible area එක කියලා. Okay, so that feasible area represent, okay, if you are using this much of input, you can produce this much. This is your feasible area to produce. Clear? Okay. So I will explain it through the diagrams. Like, okay. Yes. This is like this. Okay. So here, okay, so you need to know the lower rigid line and upper ridge line, okay? So this upper ridge line is this. Why you are saying this upper ridge line is 0? Because if you draw particular sketch here, අපි හිතමු මෙතන sketch එකක් ඇඳයි කියලා. Here, no any compromise here. Okay, therefore it's 0. මුකුත් වැඩි වෙනකොට මුකුත් quantity එකක් වැඩි වෙලා නැහැ. So that is 0. So likewise, so these regions are we called upper ridge lines. And this is lower ridge lines. Okay? But here, this is the economic region. From here to here, it's economic. Why? And my economic කියලා කියන්නේ. Negatively sloped portion of the isocont. එබන් මේ ඔක්කොම මේ ටික විතරයි negatively sloped one තියෙන්නේ. මෙහෙට යනකොට negative නැහැ. එකක් වැඩි කරනකොට අනිත් එකෙන් compromise කරන දෙයක් නැහැ. There's no any negative slope there. Okay? So negatively sloped portion of the isocont within the ridge lines represent the relevant economic region of the production. මොකද්ද කියන්නේ? Negative මේ තියෙන isocont curves, මේ isocont curves වලදී negative slope වෙලා තියෙන areas වල ඒව තමයි we call the relevant economic region. Those are negative. But when you go beyond these particular මෙතනින් එහාට ගියා කියලා හිතන්න. Beyond this area, so you will identify. Okay, there's no any compromisation. මේවට compromisations නැහැනේ. Capital 6 වලදී there's no any compromisation. නේ? මෙතන මෙන්න මේ area එක මේව කරා කියලා compromisations නැහැ. Clear? Clear? So what you, okay, in this level what you need to know about is මෙතන දැනගන්න ඕනේ. Yes. Okay, I will explain it again. So this ridge lines කියලා කියන්නේ මෙන්න මේවා තමයි ridge lines කියලා කියන්නේ. So here you are going to identify the upper ridge lines and the lower ridge lines. Lower ridge lines will be go with the labor aspects. Labor පැත්තෙන් යන. හරිද? Upper ridge lines will be drawn from the capital aspects. Capital aspects වලින් තමයි මේක draw වෙන්නේ. But here assume that this point මෙතන හිතන්න. මෙතන compromise වෙන්නේ නැහැනේ. There's no any negative one. But assuming this particular point මෙතන හිතන්න. Here you have the different compromisation. Difference එකක් තියෙනව නේද? මෙතන ඉඳන් මෙතෙන්ට. මෙන්න මේ වැන්දලා බලන්න මෙතන තියෙනවද difference එකක්? No. මෙතන මේ මම අඳිද්දී හාට මෙහාට වෙනවා විතරයි. But if you are straightly draw the line, there's no any compromise in within your different two inputs. Therefore, beyond this black line, මේ line එකෙන් උඩ තියෙන ඔක්කොම there will be MP equal to 0. That means when you are increasing particular input, there will be no any increase of your total production from this region onwards. Because why? There's no any marginal rate of substitution. එතන මොකුත් substitution එකක් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. There's no any usage of, because if you are using one only capital, can you produce the production? No, right? So you need to have both inputs, capital and labor both. Okay? මෙන්න මේ කළු පාට line එකෙන් උඩ තියෙන අනිත් ඔක්කොම levels ඔයා ඇඳලා බැලුවා ඒ එකකවත් capital එක විතරයි මේ උඩ තියෙන පැත්ත නම් upper ridge line එකේ තියෙන capital විතරමයි. There's no any labor. That means there's no any production, no the marginal production happen. That is not your economic region. No. Economic region means you have different kind of substitutions and compromisation, but you are going to achieve particular given level of output. Okay? So and these ridge lines mention that if you are going to identify your economic region, what you need to do is you should identify the curve where it represents the slope in negative. Negatively slope ලා තියෙන මේවා විතරනේ ළමයි. මේ ටික විතරයි negatively slope ලා තියෙන. Have you identified that is negatively slope? Because you can identify clearly there's a compromisation of these two inputs. මේ output හදන්නේ මේ variables දෙකල්ලම එකතු වෙලා කියලා. Okay? ඒ කියන්නේ ඔය එකක් විතරක් අමතක කරලා අයින් කළා නැහැ. Economic region එකක් වෙනනවා you have to balance your inputs now. Okay? Clear? Yes?
Yes, madam.
Okay. Okay, the one who asked question. Kavishka or Kavishka? Hope you clear, right? පුතා ඒකෙන් කියන්නේ අපි හිතන්නේ මේ black line එකක් මෙහෙම දාලා තියෙන මේකෙන් කියන්නේ ඔයාගේ economic region එක. මේ region එකේ ඕන තැනක produce කරනවා කියන්නේ you are optimally use your inputs. ඔයාගාව තියෙන resources හොඳටම use කරන. Okay? That is economic region because you are going to produce your production or the output level with using your inputs in a particular optimal way, efficient way. Okay? මේ lines ඔක්කොම බලන්න මේ කළු පාටේව touch වෙලා තියෙන මේ blue lines තියෙන්නේ මේ ඔක්කොම isocont curves හරිද? හැබැයි මේ isocont curves වල අපි මෙන්න මේ regions විතරයි feasible කියලා කියන්නේ. Because එතන ඔයාගේ marginal rate of substitution එකක් තියෙනවා. Technical substitution එක. ඒ කියන්නේ ඔයා inputs දෙකම use කරනවා production එකේ. අඩු වැඩි වශයෙන් දෙකම use කරනවා. But මේ වගේ උඩට ගියාට පස්සේ පෙන්වන්නේ හැම වෙලේම මෙතන තියෙන capital විතරයි. labor මුකුත් use කරලා නැහැ. මොකද මෙතනින් පිටිපස්සේ තියෙනවා අපි identify කරන්නේ නැහැ. line එක මෙතන touch වෙන තැන තමයි we identify it as different curves. හරිද? මෙතනින් තමයි අපි identify කරන්නේ මොන level එකෙන්ද මේක produce කරලා තියෙන්නේ කියලා. හරිද? එතකොට යාලා කියනවා the economic region එක මේ rigid lines වල ඔයාට identify වෙන්නේ ඔයාගේ isocons negatively slope වෙන වෙලාවට. Why? Because you identify there's a marginal rate of technical substitution. Simply saying you identify that balanced usage of your inputs in different combinations to produce different output levels. Okay? So it shows that economic region is where your isochrones are negatively sloped within these rigid lines. Rigid lines වල ඇතුලේ තියෙන negatively sloped වෙච්ච isochrones තියෙන area එකට we call the economic region of the production. Okay? So in the long run what we are expected is to have economic production. Okay? Because in the short run you can only change one particular variable, but in the long run you can change the both variable to increase your production. Okay, to have optimal level of production. Therefore, for an example, හිතන්නකෝ මේ කළු පාට line එකෙන් උඩ ඔයා produce කරනවා කියලා in the long run. There's no point of having advantage in the long run. ඔයා එකෙන් advantage එක කරන්නේ නැහැ long run එකේ. Because still you are using one particular variable. Clear? Yes? Hope now it's clear, right? Okay. Yes. Okay. So far we have discussed the isochrone, and also we move to the ridge lines, and you get to know about the economic feasible area in production. And now returns to scale. What is meant by returns to scale? Okay, so it deals with the impact on output of a change in the scale of a firm's operation. Return to scale කියන එකෙන් අපිට කියන්නේ it deals with the impact on output of a change in the scale. Output එකේ වෙන change එක. Proportional change in the inputs, or else there's no any proportional change in the inputs. Okay? It basically මේකේ මොකද්ද කියන්නේ කොච්චර impact එකක් කරනවද ඔයාගේ output එකේ change එකක් in the scale of a firm's operation. හරිද? firm එකේ operation එකේ output එකේ change එක කොයිතරම් impact එකක් වෙනවද කියලා තමයි බලන්නේ. So it describes what happened to the long run return as the scale of production increases. What happens to the long run return as the scale of production increases? Of course, in the long run, your scale has been increased. So what happened to the return? When all input levels are including physical, capital, usage as variable. Okay. Simply saying, output එක කොහොමද scale එක වෙනස් වෙන්නේ? So in the long run, when all the physical and capital variables the inputs are variable. Okay? So they are going to know about the long run return, scale of the production. Because your scale of the production has been increased with the long run. Now you are going to know about the return. How much of return changed? Okay? Return to scale can be classified as constant. There may be constant change in your output, increasing or decreasing. Constant in the sense output change proportionately to the change in inputs. Input වෙනස් වෙන percentage එකෙන්ම තමයි output එක වෙනස් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. That is equally proportionate. Clear? So increasing in the sense, in the long run, since you are having all two variables as variables, inputs as variables, so what you experience is you can increase your scale capacity in the production. Therefore, they are just identifying whether when in the long run, with this advantage of all the inputs are variable, is my returns to scale has been constant or increasing or decreasing. Constant කියන ඔය input වැඩි කරන ප්‍රමාණයෙන්ම change වෙන ප්‍රමාණයෙන්ම තමයි ඔයගේ output එක change වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. It's equal, constant. Same amount එකේ, proportionately. Increasing in the sense output changes more than the proportion proportionate to the change in input. Input එක වෙනස් වුණ එකට වැඩි amount එකකින් output එක change වෙලා තියෙනවා. That is increasing. Okay? Decreasing කියන්නේ output change less than proportionate to input. So in the long run, your input has been changed a lot because your capital and everything that every input has been variable. You can change whenever you want in the long run, even though your output is less. Return to scale has been lower. Long run එකේදී capacity එක වැඩි කරා, variables උනා ඔක්කොම inputs එහෙම වුණාට ඔයාගේ output එක change වෙලා නැහැ. So these are 3 scales. Okay? That you can identify. Yes. So here බලන්න මොකද වෙලා තියෙන්නේ කියලා. මොකද වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. So these are your isocons. Assuming that C curve එක කියලා හිතන්න. So that is 180. Okay? 180. And also here. In the long run also. So if you have identified here this point, increase of particular amounts that is equally contributed to your change of your quantity. Quantity එකට සමාන විදිහට තමයි මෙතන curves වෙනස් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. හරි බලන්න මේවා මෙහෙමනේ තියෙන slope එක. නේ? ටිකක් curvy shape එක. But here onwards what happened? It is more broader, right? මේක පොඩ more narrow actually. Narrow වෙලා තියෙනවා ගොඩක් මෙතන. එතන proportionately නෙමෙයි increase වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. Equally නෙමෙයි increase වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. Okay, inputs will change එකට සමානව නෙමෙයි output එක වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. So therefore we call there's increase in return, constant return and decrease in return. Okay, so you don't need to explain this kind of graph here, but you just need to know what is this return to scale. So at this particular, so since you are in the first year, you don't need to have much knowledge. Even you are in the first quarter of your semester, right? පළවෙනි quarter එකේ ඉන්නේ. So therefore you just need to know about what is returns to scale. මොකද්ද මේ returns to scale කියලා කියන්නේ, and what kind of levels, how you can classify those scales කියන්නේ. Okay, you don't need to explain these kind of graphs, but better if you can have idea. So in this particular region you can have constant return. So usage of different output are equal proportionately with your output. So like this. Okay, yes. Return to scale versus diminishing marginal return. What is that? Return to scale pertains to impact of an increase in all input quantities simultaneously, while marginal returns explain to the impact of increase in the quantity of single output, such as labor, hauled into quantities of the other input fixed. හරිද? මොකද්ද return to scale වලදී කියන්නේ ළමයි? ඔයාගේ input ඔක්කොම change වෙනකොට මොකද්ද ඔයාගේ output එකට වෙන්නේ simultaneously. Okay? So but in the marginal return, they just need to identify how much impact to your quantity by your single input. For an example, they just consider about the one particular variable there. Okay? Assuming that all the other input are fixed. Okay? Clear? So diminishing marginal return we have learned, right? අපි කලින් ඉගෙන ගත්තානේ. Diminishing marginal return කියන එක. Yes, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So return to scale කියන එක පටලව ගන්න එපා diminishing marginal return කියන එකට. අපි diminishing marginal returns කිව්ව අපි එක input එකක් වැඩි කරනවා return එක කොච්චර වෙනසක් වෙනවද, whether it is diminishing or increasing likewise. But return to scale වලින් කියන්නේ input එක වැඩි කරන ප්‍රමාණයේදී output එකට කොහොමද impact එකක් වෙන්නේ කියලා. Is it constant, increasing or decreasing? Clear? Okay?
Yes, madam.
Yes. Now elasticity of substitution. මොකක්ද මේ elasticity of substitution කියන්නේ?
Elasticity means when we take a rice, how because of the substitution effect and income effect, how the rice price will decrease or increase.
Yes, the responsive rate, right? So the response rate of what due to one change to the other one. Response rate එක කොයි වගේද? So if there's a change in price of a particular good, how much change in the quantity? So same like in this particular long run production also. So this explains the elasticity like this. So substitution. How much response? The elasticity of substitution measures how quickly the marginal rate of technical substitution of labor for capital change as we move around the isocon. Okay? So it basically explains. So when you are moving in your isocon curve, you may identify when you are substituting, when you are increasing one labor, how much capital you need to decrease. Okay. So when, for an example, if we take, so we had a kind of, okay. So this is your isocon curve. Now we are going to know the elasticity. Elasticity in marginal rate of technical substitution. We'll take this curve, right? Make a gamu. Methenidam methenta. So this is one particular point. There's another point here. When you're moving from this to this, what happened? Methana point you have to sacrifice this much of capital to increase 1 unit of labor. What mean මෙච්චරයි increase කරන්න ඕනේ, but you have to sacrifice this much of capital. නේද? එකක් so elasticity වලදී අපි කියන්නේ ඒකයි responsiveness එක. So when you are moving along with your isocont curve, then you can identify in each level how much of speed or the responsive rate of substitution labor for capital. Labor එකක් වැඩි කරනකොට capital එකේ කොච්චර අඩුවීමක්ද වෙන්නේ. So if I take this point, අපි මෙතෙන්ට යනවායි කියලා. මෙතන ඉඳන් මෙතෙන්. So now we are going to increase your labor by 2 units. Assuming you are going to increase by 2 units. Okay? This much of increase. But here, from here to here, you have to sacrifice your capital this much. The responsive rate. Okay? That is basically we call elasticity. එකක් වැඩි කරනකොට අනිත් එක කොච්චර වැඩි වෙනවද කියලා තමයි බලන්නේ. අඩු වෙනවද වැඩි වෙනවද කියලා. So in isocont you can clearly understood how in particular isocont curve how each point responds when you are increasing one labor for the capital. How much? Okay, that is elasticity. Clear? Responsive rate of changes in the capital when increasing the labor. Clear? So elasticity of isocont or the MRTS means the responsive rate of capital when increasing 1 unit of labor. Okay? So that is elasticity. Yes. How easy it is to substitute one input for another. කොච්චර easyද කියලා බලන්න. Easy, very easy. කියන්නේ එකක් වැඩි කරනකොට අරකින් 100ක් විතර compromise කරන්න ඕනිද? එහෙම නැත්නම් එකක් වැඩි කරනකොට only you have to compromise 5. So basically in simply elasticity of substitution of marginal rate of technical means labor for capital, right? ලේබර් වැඩි කරනකොට කැපිටල් කොච්චර චේන්ජ් වෙන්න ඕන. හරිද? ඒක simply කිව්වොත් how easy we can substitute one input for another. capital 10ක් use කරන වෙලාවේ you are thinking that you are going to increase another labor. When you are increasing one labor, you have to sacrifice that 10 capital, right? So elasticity, you are going to identify whether it is easy. Is it by huge amount? How quickly we can substitute those things. Clear? Elasticity of substitution is less than 1 equal labor and capital are especially substitutable. So if calculation or some question is mentioned that the elasticity of substitution of MRTS is less than 1, 0.5, that explains labor and capital input are not specifically substitutable. එකට වැඩි අඩුයි නම් elasticity එක substitution එක එකෙන් කියන්නේ you cannot specially substitute this labor and capital equally. ඒ කියන්නේ හොඳටම specially substitute කරන්න පුළුවන් inputs දෙකක් නෙමෙයි කියන්නේ. Clear? එහෙම අපි example එකක් විදිහට කිව්වොත් so in the production you are using robotics and also a human. Okay? If your elasticity of substitution, for an example, if you are going to reduce your robotics usage in the production with increase in your labor, you cannot take the optimal level of work that is conducted by robotics compared to your labor. Ne? මොනවද robotics ලා කරනවා වගේ efficiently breaks ගන්න නැතුව වැඩ කරන්නේ නැහැ labor. Therefore, there are some inputs that are not specifically substitutable. If it is less than 1, it represents there's a kind of hard substitution. අර isoconte එකේ අපි ඇඳ වගේ නෙමෙයි ලොකු පරතරයකින් තමයි change වෙන්නේ. හරිද? Not easily substitutable. Clear? Are you all clear?
Yes, madam.
Okay, only Supun is responding. Okay, Manojani. Hope everyone is clear, right?
Yes, madam.
Yes. Clear, right? Okay. Yes. So we'll move to the next. So, if you are having linear production, okay? So previously මම අර කලින් බලපු isoconte එකක්වත් linear නැහැ. It is curvy, right? It's what we call it explains and it represents like a curvy one, නේ? ඒක අපි curvy එකක් විදියට තමයි මෙච්චර වෙලා represent කරේ. Okay? But in here they mentioned that there's a linear production function. What is meant by linear? So MRT is constant. Constant means linear isocon implies that input are substituted at a constant rate. If you are using one robotic, without one compromise in one robotic, you can use one particular human. It is linear isocon and it is inputs are substitutable. Clear? Constant. But in the real world, there's no any constant kind of linear production function. Always it's a curvy linear one. Okay? So this is basically to understood. Linear production එකක් නැහැ කොහෙවත් ළමයි. Linear isocon implies that input are substituted at a constant rate. Constant rate එකකින් substitute කරන්න පුළුවන් විදිහ තමයි තියෙන්නේ. Okay? But in the isocon previously, there's no any constant, right? එකක් වැඩි වෙනකොට ඒ ප්‍රමාණයෙන්ම සහ equally නෙමෙයි ඊළඟ එක වැඩි වෙන්නේ. නේද? So difference when you are go through your curve, isocont curve එක alignly එක points වලට ගියොත් you may identify there are different changes, substitutions are there. Elasticity is different from each level. Okay? So, but in the linear production, it mentioned this MRT or the substitution is constant. Input are substituted at a constant rate. එක සමානව substitute කරන්න පුළුවන්. කියන්නේ if you are one property equal to, if you are reducing one property, you can increase one human at a same substitutable manner. Okay? All right. So fixed proportions. Fixed proportions all. No substitution between labor and capital is possible. No substitution. ඒ කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? Substitute කරන්න බැහැලු. ඒ කියන්නේ මොකද compromise කරන්න බැහැ. So these firms are always operate in the corner of the isocont. මෙන්න මේ point එකේ තමයි operate වෙන්නේ. If this is the point that you are operating, it represents, okay, this much of capital you use for the production to produce this much of Q1. And you, at that particular time, you use this much of labor. There's no any substitution. You are not going to compromise your capital to labor. Okay, there's a fixed proportion is there. There are some organization or production where you need capital, human at an equal proportional level, but you cannot substitute. අපි හිතමු ඒගොල්ලෝ machines use කරනවා and also they are using human capital or the humans. Humans එහෙම නැත්නම් labor ඒකෙන් inputs use කරනවා. But they need this both at equal level, but you cannot compromise one. ඒ කියන්නේ labor කෙනෙක් නැහැ කියලා machine එකක් වැඩි කරලා වැඩක් නැහැ. They need to have every two inputs in an equal level or in a particular level to do the given level of, to produce the given level of output. Clear? But there are productions, then in normal scenario, there's no any kind of linear production happen. Linear production now it's substitutable, compromise කරන්න පුළුවන් equally rate එකේ. තුනක් වැඩි කරනවා නම් labor, okay, එකක් වැඩි කරනවා නම් labor කෙනෙක් වැඩි කරනවා නම් ඔය තුනක් capital compromise කරනවා. Okay. Again you are going to increase another labor, again you are compromising 3. So there's a constant one. Okay? And fixed one, they need both. But you cannot compromise or you cannot substitute. No substitution. No MRTS. Zero MRTS. Clear? There are such firms. So in such particular situation, may wage no substitution between labor and capital තියෙන situation එකේදී, if the examination question asks you to draw the isocont when there's no substitution between labor and capital, so you need to draw the isocont like L. L වගේ අඳින්න ඕන. And mention and specifically point out that in this corner of the isocont only the firms will be operated. මෙතන තමයි operate වෙන්නේ. මෙහෙ operate වෙන්නේ. May operate when the band. So if you are operating in this point, what happened? You use only capital, no labor, right? So at this level only, you are using different capital and labor both. Clear? Yes? Hope everyone is clear, right?
Yes.
Okay. So today, that is all about the today's lesson. So if I recap what we have learned so far, we have just got an idea about how this long run production is happen. What is this theory of production in the long run? So previously we learned, at the previous lecture we learned the theory of production in short run. There I have mentioned there's only one variable, the other input is fixed. Okay? But in the long run, with the capacity increasement, or scale of return will be increased because of your all the input will become variables. That means you can change, and your plant size has been changed, location has been changed, capacity has been changed. Therefore, of course, your output might be changed, but in different level. It might be constant, it might be increasing or decreasing, as I mentioned previously. Okay, and you learn isocont. Isocont is a major concept that you have to learn in the long run, which explains the combination of input to produce particular level of output. Okay, so at there you have learned about different levels that you can use to produce the given level of output. You may use different capital amounts and labor amount. Of course, when you're moving along the curve, you have to do compromisation or substitution of each inputs, because yes, of course, you can only witness substitution of inputs in the long run, right? In short run, there's no any substitutions. Substitutions bukut nahe. But in the long run, you can identify substitution is there, because all things are variable. But there are some cases, as I mentioned at the latter part. So there are cases where we have what? Fixed proportions. No substitutions among two inputs might be there. Okay? And we have learned about characteristics, and we have learned about MRTS, very important thing, which explain how is different inputs are changing or substitution each other. How you are going to maintain the level of output through substituting both inputs. Yes, and just we learned different kind of, yes, we learned ridge lines. Lower ridge line is there. Lower ridge line is in the area of labor. Upper ridge line is the area of capital. And you learn about what is the economic region of the production. And you learn about the returns to scale. Okay. And also returns to scale versus diminishing marginal return. So diminishing marginal return explains how your quantity will be changed due to the single input changes. But the return to scale mentioned your impact to output. The output take to impact take because of change of your all the input in the long run. Long run එකේදී තිබු input ඔක්කොම වෙනස් වෙන නිසා මොකක්ද වගේ output එකට උණු impact එක. That is explained by returns to scale. Okay? Then we learn about elasticity, and there you learn about if the elasticity of substitution is less than 1, not specifically substitutable. If it is greater than 1, of course it is substitutable inputs are there. For an example, among example like විදිහට කිව්වා robots like humans like same substitutable කියලා ගන්න පුළුවන් if it is greater than 1. And there's a linear production scenario we discussed. Substitute at a constant rate. Capital and labor will be substituted in a constant rate. And fixed, where the firms cannot be substituted between labor and capital. Machines human strength එකයි කියන එක equally substitute කරන්න බැරි firms තියෙනවා. At that particular point, they will be operating at the corner of the isocont, where you have different capital amounts and also the labor amount. Okay? So hope today's lesson is clear. Is it?
Yes, madam. Clear.
Okay, others? Okay, yes. Okay. So with that, I will conclude the today's lesson, and hopefully we will do another one or two lecture. Yes, basically there will be another one lecture, hopefully, for the cost of production. Cost of production will අපි තව lecture එකක් ගමු. And So as I mentioned in the when I start in the lecture also, so examination questions will be based on that will be created or constructed by the lecturers that taught the business economics. Okay, that will be changed. The pattern might be changed lecturer to lecturer, but at this particular level, you may. So if you are having 4 lessons conducted so far, try to get the basic understanding first about your particular topics. Okay, and then read all these documents and go through and identify what are the key aspects or the key concept that explain whole lessons. For an example, if I take this lesson, so you need to have brief understanding what is loan run and the production and all. But you have to know about different concept that explain this basic idea. The basic idea explain කරන concept මොනවද කියලා දැනගන්න ඕන. And okay, and then you have to have idea on explaining those aspects. If explain කරන්නේ කොහොමද කියලා. Okay, and another thing is don't write whatever the things that you are note. දන්න හැම එකම ඔහේ ලියන්න එපා. Explain the things what we ask in the question. Question එක අහලා තියෙන විදිහට දාන්න. So when you are studying also, take one topic and read carefully. If it is not understood, read again. If not, please get the help from your colleagues or whatever the resources and try to get the good understanding about each concept. එක තියෙන හැම concept එකක්ම දැනගන්න. Because in economics, every topics are linked to each other, right? So the indifference curves characteristics might be same as isocont, isn't it? එහෙම නේද? Indifference curve එකේ තිබ්බ characteristics isocont එකේ තිබ්බනේ. So you might be confused in the examination. හොඳේ confused වෙන්නත් පුළුවන්. But you should know indifference curve එකේ මොනවද තිබ්බ මේ factors දෙපැත්තේ inputs මොනවද? But what are the inputs in the isocont? What is actually mean by isocont? How you are going to draw it? Okay? MRTs, if there's a value given for MRTs, how you are going to explain this amount? Okay? So that thing you have to have when you are studying for the exam. So I cannot exactly say these are the questions and these are the areas that you need to focus, because there's another lecturer who will be conducting the lectures for economics. So the question patterns might be changed, but for sure that will your exam will be evaluate your basic understanding, also how you are going to apply this concept in your when you are in your question paper. When, for an example, if it asks a question to elaborate how the loan run is procedures happen, so you need to explain those everything that what we have learned today in some aspect, not all the things, but you should have a clear connection between what you are talking or what you are written in the question paper. Okay, are you all clear?
Excuse madam, can I ask a question?
Yes.
What is the structure of the question, madam?
So still we haven't discussed it. So I will discuss with Professor Ravindra sir, and I will. So he might be explain you the structure actually. So we haven't discussed it yet.
Okay, madam. Generally, in question paper, in essay question, how many words and times we should spend, madam?
Okay, so this is 4 credit subject, right? Make a 4 credit subject එකක් නේද ඔයාලගේ? Yes, right? Subject එකේ code එකට පස්සේ 4 කියලා නේද තියෙන්නේ? නැද්ද? So if it is a 2 hours paper, there will be assuming that there will be all essay questions කියලා හිතන්නකො 2 hours නම් essay question. They will ask you to write one essay question in 30 minutes. normally 30 minutes වගේ දෙනවා එක question එකක් ලියන්න. Okay? Then if there's 2 parts, you have to allocate your time accordingly. And when you are writing, don't worry how many pages you are writing. කොච්චර pages ලිව්වත් වැඩක් නැහැ if you are not writing the correct answer. So if the question asks you to written 4 factors, then specifically mention 4 factors and explain it. Before mentioning factors, you can use different introduction area before you are going to the answer, you may explain the broader or the basic understanding of your particular lesson covers. හරිද? ඒ cover වෙලා තියෙන lesson එකේ පොඩි introduction එකක් දීලා you may go for the factors that asked. Okay? And explain with examples. And conclude with a particular justification. Okay? Isocont එකේ මෙහෙම so this is the way of isocont, but there are some critical cases like linear production and also kind of a fixed production. අර මේ වගේ situations තියෙනවා කියලා you can conclude. Okay? I will clear that.
Yes, madam. Thank you, madam.
Okay. So time එක manage කරගන්න සහ අහන question එකේ points amount ගන්නට ඔයාලා එක right ලියන්න answer එක. එහෙම නැතුව අර ඔක්කොම ගොඩක් පිටු එහෙම ලියලා එහෙම වැඩක් නැහැ. If you are writing your answer not in a point form, you can use point and explain. If it is a essay question. If it is a structured question, of course you can write the short answers. Okay? Okay, hope everyone is clear. So with that, I will conclude today's lesson and I will share the recording with Naomi and everyone can share that one. And if you have any question, please bring those questions to next session and we will do the cost of production in the next sessions. Okay? Okay, so with that, I will conclude. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, madam. Good night.
Thank you, madam.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, madam. Good night.